The Pittsburgh Steelers tried to move the needle by adding Jalen Ramsey, but they won't be the toughest defense the Bengals face in 2025. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow, he's James Rapien, and we're your hosts of Locked On Bengals, covering the Cincinnati Bengals daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network, on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Your everydayers out there, you already know what's going on here, but if you're looking for a daily source of all things Bengals, whether it's news, whether it's analysis, whether it's off-season topics here in the last couple of slow weeks before training camp is here. We're in July. For a lot of you listening to this here on July 1st, you're in the right place. You can just hit that subscribe button, and that'll help you not miss an episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. And we appreciate everyone out there who makes us your first listen. Today, we're going to dive into the best defenses the Bengals are going to face in 2025. And this is the day we're recording this, the day the Steelers make a big move. They go get Jalen Ramsey to try to improve their defense. I think the Steelers are in the conversation, James, but when you look at the Bengals schedule this year, there are a number of teams that have a pretty good argument for being some of the better defenses in the NFL.
For sure. And it's going to be one of those things. The theme week in and week out, we're going to be like, oh man, they got this pass rusher, or they got this guy that you're going to have to worry about, and you're going to have to think about it. And a lot of these defenses are going to have that. And man, I look, and the reason why Cleveland week one is kind of, you make a face like that's a game you should win, but it's Cleveland, and they have Myles Garrett, and they have other guys that are going to make life tough. Denzel Ward has obviously had some success against Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Bengals. I look at Minnesota, at Denver, two defenses that should be really darn good. I think Green Bay is intriguing. Obviously, in the division, anytime you talk about the AFC North, I think you think defense when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers. You mentioned the Ramsey trade. So there are a lot of teams I think that will go over, but there aren't many where you look at it and you say, oh, well, their defense stinks. Like, you might not think much of the Jets, but they have some real dudes in the trenches, and they have one of the best corners in football. And so that's not necessarily going to be fun, even though it's going to be at Paycor Stadium. So there are a lot of solid defenses to really good defenses on this list.
There are some that you don't worry about as much, but the Bengals don't catch the NFC South this year. They caught them last year. They got the NFC North this year, and those are obviously some very different divisions in terms of defense quality. The Carolina Panthers still major questions on defense. The Saints still major questions on defense. This year, instead, like you said, the Bengals get Minnesota, they get Green Bay, they get Detroit. And Detroit, I think, is in the conversation for potentially being the best defense the Bengals are going to face this year. I think Pittsburgh is in the conversation. I said it might not ultimately be them. We'll talk about whether swapping Jalen Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick is enough for them to push that conversation. But I'm not sure the answer is actually in the AFC North for all the familiarity and the emphasis on defense in the AFC North and good players on AFC North defenses has at times given the Bengals issues in the last 5 years or so, the Joe Burrow era. I'm not sure that the answer is in the AFC North, James. I think it's in, I don't know. For me, it might be between Denver and one of those NFC North teams.
Well, I think if it is the North, one of two things has to happen. Either Jair Alexander has to be really, really good again and dial it back. Because I think if he did that for Baltimore, it really changes. Now you're talking about corner, safety, and linebacker, and they have a heck of an interior pass rush as well. And so I think that they have guys. And so if you had that true elite-ish corner, and then Marlon Humphrey is your two, like, you're feeling really darn good about it. Now, it probably won't happen. Maybe it does. That's why you take the swing on a guy like Jair Alexander. For the Steelers, if they were getting prime Jalen Ramsey, then it would feel different with that front. I think a lot of people would argue they're not getting prime Jalen Ramsey. And so to your point, yeah, Denver, The reigning defensive player of the year is in Denver. And so when you add that to what they have, to that pass rush, to really all three levels of their defense, it's a really good unit. And yet, no matter who we talk about, and we're 5 minutes in, so we might as well say this. No matter who we talk about, it's not like the Bengals won't be able to score against these teams or be able to have success on offense against these teams. They have a lot of answers. But there are a lot of talented defenses, and it's important to highlight them. I think I agree with you, though, as black and blue as the AFC North is. When I think of the Ravens, and this isn't really fair, but I still think of defense because of all the years of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. I don't necessarily think of offense, even though they have a multi-time MVP leading the charge, and Derrick Henry, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame. I mean, they have some dudes on offense, obviously, but I still think of defense. The Steelers, I certainly think of defense, and it starts with their defensive front. That being said, the Broncos are probably that team. I do think the Vikings, they're just really, really sound and really well coached. And so they're in the mix as well. But I would probably give the edge to Denver.
I think a team we haven't mentioned either that we need to make sure we don't forget, Buffalo has a very strong defense if they can stay healthy on that side of the ball too. But with Denver, with Patrick Surtain, with good safeties, with a front that features Zach Allen, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, they're guys that can get after the passer. They're good in the secondary. They're incredibly well coached. They have Dre Greenlaw as well, who they added this offseason, who's been a good linebacker. They are a good defense that got better. The Bengals play Denver in Denver, which is also never a benefit to the visiting team. The mile high altitude issues that benefit Denver playing at home, a primetime game there, that the first primetime game of the year. And not necessarily the first test for the Bengals offense in the year, to your point. Minnesota the week before that, Cleveland, for all of Cleveland's issues, is going to be annoying on the road in the opener with Myles Garrett leading the charge for that defense. But it's really going to be a conversation, I think, of can another team persuade us off of Denver with the defensive player of the year and a strong defense surrounding him as a quote unquote challenge for the Bengals offense. Because like you said, we expect the Bengals offense to drive this team, right? And no matter what defense they're facing, we're expecting the offense to push the team forward. Baltimore's defense last year wasn't bad. The Bengals put up numbers on them. And that's the kind of thing that the Bengals will need to do this year. And it's a matter of, can any of these teams find the formula to get the Bengals into that Broncos-style game that we've seen these teams play the last couple of times these teams have played, where it's kind of that knock them down, drag it out kind of game.
Yeah, the Broncos, they took some interesting chances. They paid Jerry Greenlaw a lot of money. Hufanga, the strong safety, is really, really good, but he's had a lot of injuries. And so they get two San Francisco 49ers veterans that were big parts of the 49ers when they were making Super Bowl runs, but they've had some health issues. Will those guys be able to contribute? One of the reasons why the Bengals had so much success against the Broncos in that wacky win is because T. Higgins bought land on Riley Moss Island. And by buying land, he actually acquired the whole island.
Yeah, whole thing.
And it's T. Higgins's now. It says property of T. Higgins. Well, the Broncos said, all right, well, we're going to go get Jahdae Barron as well.
Yeah.
And so how does that mix? Does Nick Bonito continue to be one of these quality young pass rushers? I think there's some questions, but if you're a Broncos fan, you really like that on paper. And that should be a fun back and forth, I would say, because the Bengals, there are going to be teams that this year, I think, try to do even more unique wrinkles and throw even more unique wrinkles at Jamar Chase to try to take him out of it. And that's when you need T, or you're going to need Chase Brown, or you're going to need Mike Gesicki, Andre Yosevich, all these other answers to the test. Those guys are going to matter, and that Broncos game could certainly be one of those.
Definitely one of the best corner wide receiver matchups of the year is Surtain and Jamar and T, just because Surtain is a premier player there. And the Bengals have a number of those really high quality DB wide receiver matchups. That's another fun part of the schedule is finding those strength on strength matchups. But we'll continue and try to identify the other defenses that will challenge the Cincinnati Bengals in 2025. And is that the Buffalo Bills? Are we going to the NFC North? We'll get into that coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is right around the corner, but before you get there, summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. They have live bets, they have daily promotions. You can track your favorite matchups. Use the app to follow along and live bet. You can do that as well. And whether it's a same game parlay or letting a bet ride in the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. So make sure you check out FanDuel right now, where new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So throw $5 on the Reds or on any Major League Baseball matchup, tennis, golf, and when that $5 bet wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets that you could throw on some Bengals futures. Again, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
It's difficult to distinguish defenses at this time of year because you never know what the team is going to look like when the Bengals inevitably face them. But when you look at the beginning of the Bengals schedule, the run of Minnesota, Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, Pittsburgh from week 3 to 7 features a bunch of defenses that are in contention here, with Buffalo, with potentially Baltimore, to be some of the more challenging defenses the Bengals face in 2025. So if we agree that it might be Denver leading the way, and this might all change in a few weeks, who knows? We're in early July, late June here. Well, who stands out to you next? Is it Detroit? Is it Pittsburgh? Where are you going next?
Yeah, it's in that mix, right? I think Detroit is certainly a team. Oh, DJ Reader, and then they get your guy from Ohio State. Do you remember him from the draft? Do you remember your guy? Pretty sure they got your guy.
I'm concerned about who you're going to attribute to me as my guy after that lead in.
Oh, Tyreek Williams, your guy. What do you mean?
An actual my guy. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I was serious. Like when they drafted, they got Tyreek Williams, and then they get Tate Ratledge, and I'm like, man, oh man. But Tyreek and DJ, what a guy that you can have learning from DJ Reader, who obviously delivered from them last year. We'll see on Aiden Hutchinson. I think that's a big factor here.
Yeah.
When you're looking at this defense for the Lions, they bring in DJ Reed. I think he's going to help bring some stability in that secondary. But after that, it's really all right. Can Aiden Hutchinson be the dominant pass rusher that he was right before his injury? Can he be that and then take another step? But they have a ton of talent, and I do think that's what it comes down to when you look at, is Detroit going to be a top defense? It's probably how Aiden Hutchinson is, how he's doing. Is he one of these top edge rushers this season? If so, then they're probably going to be a heck of a defense.
Aiden Hutchinson's start last year was crazy. He had 198 pass rush snaps in 5 games when he was healthy. He had 45 pressures in 5 games, 8 sacks in 5 games. Trey Hendrickson had 514 pass rushes last year, had 83 pressures. Just to give you an idea there of the rate, this is PFF numbers, of the rate at which Aiden Hutchinson was producing last year for Detroit. They've also extended Ali McNeil. They bring back Levi Onwuzurike. DJ Reader's still part of that team, like you mentioned, despite adding Tyreek Williams in the draft. Just a stacked defensive front. And it's not just a defensive front. Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch as safety. One of the best safety tandems in the NFL, if not the best safety tandem in the NFL. Jack Campbell, who many thought was drafted earlier than he should have been in that draft for Detroit. Detroit doesn't care what you think. They're going to pick guys when they think they're good. And Jack Campbell is one of the best linebackers in the NFL. You got Carlton Davis at corner as well, and he was good for them last year. He only played 13 games, so whether he stays healthy, maybe there is something to exploit at corner. But that's really it if you're talking about the Lions. Really, really good in the front 7. Really, really good at safety. And then it's just a question of whether they have enough at corner and whether the Bengals can exploit that.
That 2023 draft was just wild. It's just wild for them because they're able to get Campbell after taking Jahmyr Gibbs, and then they get Brian Branch, and Brian Branch is a big part of what they do. And yeah, it's always healthy. Man, I recognize a lot of names on their defensive front, like DJ Reader, obviously Aleem McNeil. I'm just talking about their tackles. But then after that, your guy, Tyleek Williams, Levi Unzarike, and then Makai Wingo. Like it's like five deep where you're like, I'll take those five. I'll take those five. And so maybe they want a little bit more on the edge if they're not satisfied with Marcus Davenport, but there's not much. I'm being very nitpicky here about what you would complain about or not necessarily like. It's a really solid unit, and it's why honestly the offense for Detroit got a ton of love last year, and rightfully so. But why they like if they're going to be true Super Bowl contenders, it's because their defense takes a step. I truly believe that because you have Jared Goff. And Jared Goff is not the Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, not some of these guys. Obviously, Lamar, Patrick, he's not on that level. He's just not. And so, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, your defense is going to have to be a tick better than your opponents, and going to be able to or has to be able to slow things down. And at least on paper, you're trying out Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader, Tyleek Williams, some of these guys. It's going to be a tough one to face those guys.
And really good safeties. Like I said, those safeties last year, Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, just absolute game changers for Detroit on that side of the ball. So the Cat Bros in the NFC North in contention here. Do we think that the Detroit Lions pose a bigger problem for the Bengals than the Bills on paper should be in this conversation, but because of the way those games have gone, I'm not there at the moment, but it is a different Bills defense than it's been in the past, notably because Christian Benford is broken out at corner, and that'll be a fun matchup to see how he holds up against the Bengals receivers. But it's kind of Detroit versus those AFC North contenders for me, if we're talking about number two. Baltimore, Pittsburgh. I do think the addition of Jalen Ramsey, if he's healthy, and the addition of Jair Alexander, if he's healthy, those are big ifs. If those guys play the full season at the level they've played at in the past, those AFC North teams that are so familiar with the Bengals, that have the continuity defensive coordinator this year, I think those teams are probably right there in the conversation with Detroit, if not ahead of Detroit. So let's finish the show by trying to figure out where those AFC North teams stack up with the Lions, with some of these other teams coming up next.
Jake, the thing that stands out anytime I look at Pittsburgh, anytime, and I know they just made the trade for Jalen Ramsey, but I look and I'm like, oh man, Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Derek Harmon and well, obviously Alex Highsmith and they got Jack Sawyer as well. Like it goes on and on and on of these dudes that you're like, well, yeah, Jack Sawyer in round 4, you take that. He's like, who knows when he'll play. I forgot Nick Herbig as well. Like that. That's it. There's just layers.
Yep.
There's like layers and layers and layers to their defensive front. And I thought they stole Peyton Wilson in the draft last year. I think he delivered some. You bring in Patrick Queen as well. It is interesting because I think that today that they got the worst player. They did not get the best player in their trade. I don't think Jalen Ramsey is better than Minka Fitzpatrick today. But when I look at their secondary and I say, all right, well, you have Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr., Darius Slay, and you have Juan Thornhill and Deshaun Elliott, and you're going to play more of a traditional setup and not have this versatile chess piece at safety. I think it does fit with that rush. Like that's as dynamic of a rush is you're probably going to see, assuming TJ Watt is around and motivated and healthy and playing on a new deal, which I think he will be. So it's really tough for me to discount Pittsburgh. They wanted to get a true shutdown corner or something close to that. Maybe Ramsey fits what they're looking for. They're clearly taking a risk there and going all in on this year. But that front is what I keep coming back to and why I would probably take Pittsburgh's defense over any defense in the North because when you're starting with that kind of front, you can put Jake Liscow out there and you're still going to be pretty darn good in coverage.
And they don't have to. Like they have guys that aren't like they've had deficiencies in the past. And I'm not sure Joey Porter Jr. is that guy, but he has a big name, he has a big draft pedigree, and he's going to get every chance to show he is that guy. I think the Darius Slay signing, I know they're old for NFL teams. I can't talk about anybody being old here, but for NFL terms, they got some guys that have been around for a while, but they're good players. Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, like those are guys that are better than what they've had at corner.
No doubt.
If they're healthy,
No doubt.
if they're playing close to the level they've played at in the past. And then you mentioned Peyton Wilson. Talk about a tailor-made pick to deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. Just
Hate it.
a
Hate it.
pure cover backer. Like I went and looked. Peyton Wilson's snap split against the Bengals. The Bengals don't run the ball that much, but against the Bengals, Peyton Wilson had in their first game 32 pass down snaps to 3 run down snaps in that game. That's insane. That's an insane split. In the second game, it was 34-7, 34 pass down snaps, 7 run down snaps. So the Steelers are hiding Peyton Wilson in the run game. At least they did when he was a rookie, 238 pounds, 6'4", an older rookie. But he played well in coverage against the Bengals last year. And when you couple that, like you said, with the front is where obviously all of this starts, where they're like 7 deep of guys that would start on the Bengals. Probably.
Yeah,
Maybe
you'd love
6,
Nick Herbig. Like
yeah.
you'd love
Yeah, no doubt.
like Peyton Wilson, you love him. Like I know that's not the front. Keanu Benton would be a huge part of what they do.
Yep,
You know,
no
he
doubt.
would be starting. By the way, like they probably don't re-sign BJ Hill if Keanu Benton's in town. Like
Yep.
probably it. It's no, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, and that's part of the North. That's what's really interesting. The Steelers trying to make it all work, and yet I still think overall roster wise, they're behind the Bengals. They're behind the Ravens, and I look at this Ravens defense. How do you feel about it now? They added Jair Alexander. They get Malachi Starks. I think that one's just going to really matter. I just do. Starks and Hamilton together. That's a heck of a 1-2. They've invested a lot in this defense. You look. Nate Wiggins was their first rounder. Kyle Hamilton, first rounder. Malachi Starks, a first rounder. They signed Jair Alexander. They traded for Roquan Smith, which never should have been able to steal him like they did. Matabike they paid. There are always guys that end up there, and you're like, how did they do that? Well, this year was Mike Green. And Mike Green's someone that a lot of Bengals fans wanted in round 1. He had the off the field stuff, falls to the Ravens in round 2. How are you feeling about this unit overall?
I think Baltimore has this track record that's almost the opposite of the Steelers when it comes to developing edge rushers. Like they draft these toolsy guys who have had productivity in college at times, or sometimes they don't, but like they've got a ton of athleticism on the edge that hasn't translated to production in the NFL. I know Mike Green had the production in college, but that's an interesting litmus test for the scout the helmet. Can Baltimore develop an edge rusher to be a true difference maker as an edge rusher? Because they got sacks last year. Matabike had 11 sacks. This is including the postseason. Let's make sure we're only looking at the regular season, and this doesn't include half sacks. So Matabike had 8 regular season sacks according to PFF's counting. Owa had 10, and Kyle Van Noy had 13. Is Van Noy still on that roster, James? Are you looking at that?
He is. Yep, he is.
So Van Noy, who is going to be 34 for this season, still an effective pass rusher, but largely when I talk about the Ravens, when we've looked at the Ravens matchups in recent years, it's are they going to be able to manufacture a pass rush? And it's finding the opportune time to send Kyle Hamilton on a blitz, to find the right time to send a linebacker on a blitz, and not necessarily what they've been able to manufacture up front. Although Travis Jones and Matabike in the middle are both really good players, not necessarily great pure pass rushers. So from a front perspective, starting there, I think that distinction between the Ravens and the Steelers makes me prefer the Ravens matchup, even if I think their secondary is better, even if I think that they're more cohesive overall. They had these guys last year. And what's the big difference, right? Is another year for Kyle Hamilton. Maybe Roquan Smith has a better year overall. Maybe he's more consistent. And then does their improved corner depth play up? Because they had a lot of these guys last year, and the Bengals hung points on them last year. And so maybe it's year 2 for the defensive coordinator in the post Mike McDonald era that makes a difference. But I've, despite what feels like on paper should be really close, feel pretty comfortable thinking that the Steelers should be a bigger challenge to deal with for the way the Bengals are put together.
And it's because of that layered front.
Yeah.
We should trademark that. It's just it can hit you in waves. I mean, they can literally TJ Watt's nicked up. Okay. Like, all right, well we'll throw Nick Herbig out there and we'll be good to go. And that's it. And that's what's really tough is you got Nick Herbig, you got Alex Highsmith, you got guys that are going to matter. And at some point, Jack Sawyer could matter this year. Obviously, Derek Harmon's another one that the Bengals passed on, and we'll see what happens there and how he pans out. You mentioned some of these guys. I agree with you. I think Baltimore's a tough matchup. A big reason why they're a tough matchup. They're solid on defense, and they have some stars on defense. But then there's obviously far more star power on their offense as well. And that's why it's so tough to beat them. The Steelers, they have all that layered depth on their defensive front. I think they're the best defense in the North. Again, I'm not sure that Ramsey is better on paper than Minka Fitzpatrick now, but does it fit what they're probably trying to do? Are they sick of not being able to cover the way they want to cover? And do they need to evolve in that way? I think that's what they're saying. Could make some sense here. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I think that they're the best defense in the North, at least entering training camp.
I think it'll come down to the way the secondaries come together on both teams. When we're revisiting this conversation in a couple of months, when the Bengals are getting into their, 3 weeks of 2 Baltimore games later in the season, it's going to be how does the secondary come together? Because, like you said, those safety pieces in Baltimore really good, and if that can be the glue that makes that secondary really stick, and lets the front play up because the secondary is giving the front an extra 0.3 of a second to get home, then we could be having a different conversation at that point. If it doesn't come together in Pittsburgh and they can't figure it out in the secondary, and for all of their prowess up front, the Bengals are able to quick game them to death, to invoke the quick game here a little bit. So the other contenders here that we aren't going to talk about in a ton of depth, I think Minnesota, Green Bay are both defenses that should be in the top 12, maybe higher in the NFL this year. And then I mentioned it. I've paid them lip service and not much more than that. But Buffalo's defense has a chance to be very solid as well. And those are the other ones that I would think are in contention. But a surprisingly tough stretch from week 3 to week 7 is one of my big takeaways here. When it's Minnesota, Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, some good defenses that the Bengals will be playing early on. Now, that is after playing Cleveland, who on paper shouldn't be great on that side of the ball, but has some dudes that have given the Bengals issues in the past, as we've discussed. And Jacksonville, who, again, on paper, shouldn't be great on defense. But then it gets a little bit trickier on paper.
Yeah, you better make your hay early. You start 2-0, and then it's going to be battles, and that's fun. Hopefully it's a lot of fun early on and throughout the season. But we've said so many times, how many people have said, well, the offense is set. The offense is set, but they're going to be challenged. And they're certainly going to be challenged when they face some of these top teams and defenses we talked about. Before we go, you got to wish Jake Liscow a happy birthday. It was his birthday on Monday. And so everyone, make sure you tweet him, send him a message on the Locked On Bengals Insiders Club, or however you want to. But yeah, happy birthday, my man.
Appreciate that. That's why I said the thing about I can't say anything about how old these DBs are.
I know. I was like, I'm not going to interrupt him. I'll wait.
Oh, we're feeling it today. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening. And until next time, hoo day and have a good one.